Hey there, I'm Sammy and welcome back to my channel. In this week's video, I'm going to be giving a set of two a new life. So follow along to see exactly how I transform these pieces. This is the two-piece set I'll be starting off with. It is in decent shape. It's got some really good bones. Overall, it just needs to be refinished, and that is my goal of this project. It's got some solid hardware, so I do plan on keeping that. I found lots of goodies in the top drawer, and we will find a few more later in this video also. The drawers are in pretty good shape. As you can see here, there's not too much damage overall. There's some wearing of the veneer, but not to worry about that. It's nothing we can't handle. I brought both of these in the shop. I'm gonna start working on them. First thing I'm gonna do is remove all of the hardware. And I'm gonna set it aside for later because I think I'm going to reuse all of the same hardware. It's all in really good shape and I think it just fits the piece really well. Oh my, you guys, there's so many goodies in there. We've got mail, we've got mail. I wonder what it could be. Let's see what we got. It's a Mother's Day card. Thank you, Mother, for all of your love and for the way you make life special all year through. Oh, it's a happy birthday card, but for his mother, or her mother. Thanks, Mom. Lower GI series. Okay. This is about an enema. Lots of cards in here for my wife. Christmas has always been a very special time for us because of you. These are such sweet cards. So sweet. It's Mother's Day. Another Mother's Day card. Well, they loved cards, and maybe this was their secret stash. If you're planning on keeping the hardware, I suggest getting a small container to store all the hardware and the screws in so that you don't lose them. I like to use little tubs like this and add all my hardware and all the hardware screws and set those aside for later. Then I started by vacuuming everything out. There was quite a bit of dust and little tiny knickknacks, pins, and needles left in this dresser, so I wanted to make sure to vacuum that all up before we got into this project. All right, we are moving into sanding now. So I'm gonna go in with an 80 grit sandpaper. I think that is going to be coarse enough to remove this old finish, but not necessarily burn through the veneer. This is veneer, so we wanna be careful when we're sanding. And just remember it mostly when you're on the edges. That is the easiest area that's going to burn through if you're sanding. But I'm gonna try to remove majority of this finish with the 80 grit, and then we're gonna work our way up to a 220 grit sandpaper. And that way the surface will be nice and smooth, and then we can re-oil this piece and bring it back to life. So let's get to sanding because we've got a lot of it. What are you doing over there? He's obsessed with turtles and will literally go find them in the woods and bring them to me. And there was one on our lawn this morning, so gotta keep an eye on this one. What did you get into? You're covered in white stuff. Yes, you are. You wanna go inside because it's so hot? Let's put you inside. You might notice that I did not clean these pieces, and I probably should have, but honestly, once I started sanding, the finish was coming off really easily on this first dresser here, but I will run into a bit of an issue, and I'll explain that in a minute. So this is when I ran into my problem. Like I said, the first dresser, everything came off super easily. I didn't have any problems with it gunking up my sander, but this one, for some reason, it was so different. Even though they seemed to be finished the exact same, this one was super thick. It kept gunking up my sander. I started by scraping the excess off because I would last about 30 seconds and then I would need to switch up my sandpaper, so I had to do something else. I have an issue. I've really never had this happen to me before. Like, I've definitely had my sander gunk up because there is a really thick finish on it, or maybe it's not cleaned that well. But this finish, only on this dresser, is like, you cannot sand it. This happens in like 30 seconds or less, like 15 seconds. And I don't have a scraper, so that's my issue. But it's completely different from the other dresser I just sanded. That came off no problem. I had no issues. The finish came off really well with the 80 grit sandpaper. This one, however, it's like there's a super thick wax layer on top of this that's really just not wanting to be sanded off and needs to be removed before I sand. So I need to go get a carbide scraper since I don't have one from a store. So I'm gonna do that really quick. Wow, that was really quick. All right, let's get to scraping now. I was shook at how easy using the scraper was, and mostly just like, why the heck didn't I get one before, and how have I lived all of my furniture flipping career without one? Because it would have made so many projects so much quicker, and I just am regretting all of my life choices now, and I'm so happy that I finally have one, and I'll be using this thing so much. I have seen in the comments so many times people saying, why don't you have a scraper? Why don't you use a scraper? So here it is. I finally got my hands on a scraper, and you were right. Not only was it like so much easier, it was so satisfying, like just seeing the finish scrape off effortlessly and then being left with these little crumbles behind to vacuum up. Ugh, most satisfying thing ever. Then I switched to sanding and the finish came off so easily. I was really pleased by using this combo of carbide scraper and sander, and it got the job done much quicker than just sanding. I stuck with this combination of scraper and sander throughout the rest of the flip, and it made everything go much quicker. When you're finishing pieces, don't forget to sand the top and the edges of the drawers. Those can often get missed and then they won't look as clean and fresh as the rest of the piece, or you forget until the very end and have to go back and redo that part. So just remember, pay attention to detail, get the edges and the tops of the drawers. All right, most of the sanding is done. I've got all the drawer fronts sanded, majority of the bases sanded, and now I want to get the legs done. So you'll notice these have a little rim of gold on the bottom. I want to keep them, but they can be removed, and it's just going to make it that much easier to, one, restore these, and to sand these legs down. So they have a little pin, so I'm going to remove that pin, and these should just slide right off. Then I can sand these down, and do I need to fix these up so they look good as new. First, I wiggled the little nail loose with a scraper, and then I went in with a hammer to remove it the rest of the way. honestly don't know how I was living my life without this thing. It makes this so much easier. So much easier. The finish, someone has refinished this before, I've realized. And like some areas have a really thick varnish on top and some are just like really thin areas, come off really easy with my sander. Either way, going over this, taking a few minutes to scrape it and then sand it, it is 10 times faster than just sanding every surface. So I've been going in with this mostly over everything just about before I go in and sand it. Especially for this little detailed edge right here. It's a really tiny edge, but it's got this varnish on it. And I want that to be removed before I go and refinish it. And this is perfect for just like barely getting that edge, and it removes all of that. And then I can like hand sand it just ever so slightly and it's gonna be perfect. So I don't know why haven't I got one until now? Why? Like, I would not be this far into this project today if it wasn't for this thing. 20 bucks, best 20 bucks I've ever spent, I'm gonna tell you that. So go get a carbide scraper. It's well worth it. Alright, it's been a long day of sanding. I have one more thing I want to do before I kind of close up for the day so that it can dry overnight and be good to go in the morning. This drawer is falling apart. I pushed it back together a little bit, but the base is coming out. You can kind of see how it's wiggling there. All it really needs is some glue, more stabilization. You'll see these little pieces of wood it's missing one over here, and it's missing this strip right here, which is what holds the bottom of this drawer together. So I'm gonna put this back in place, put some glue on this, put it back where it needs to go, and then place another support cube right here, and then everything should be good and dry in the morning. This little piece of wood was actually inside of the dresser when I took everything apart, and I've found where the missing piece goes. Along with this, this is a piece of a door glide that kind of broke off, which we may put back on and fix later, but that's another thing. Okay, then we're gonna let this sit overnight, and I'm gonna call it for the day, and we will come back tomorrow morning and hopefully finish this project up. Alright, next I'm going to go in and make any repairs that I need to make. There's not that many, there's just a few areas that have a little piece of missing veneer or a small little dent, but I don't want there to be any imperfections within these two pieces of furniture, so I'm going to go ahead and repair those. I'm going to use some epoxy putty. I love this stuff. It's so easy to use, and in this case it's way better than Bondo because it is more color matched to this wood. So when it comes time to matching it perfectly, touching it up with some paint or some markers, it's way easier than trying to cover up a green or blue Bondo and match it to this wood grain. You can buy this in different types of wood. I believe this one is mahogany. I just have this one on hand, and it's way closer to the color of any type of wood than Bondo is, so I always go for this if I'm going with a natural wood finish. And it's like mess free. I do wear gloves because I don't like to get it on my hands. It can be a little sticky and I really hate the smell of it. But you just break off a little piece and mix it together, and then you do have to work pretty quickly before it hardens, because it hardens like just as quick as Bondo does. So make sure you get it on the areas, press it in there really well, and then give it about 15 minutes. It's dry and ready for sanding. Not that that needs a long time to dry. I'm just gonna kind of break from filling it, and we're gonna finish this detailed sanding on the drawer fronts. There's some grooves in here that need to be sanded that my sander did not get into, so I'm just gonna go and hand sand those really quickly. They're really tiny, the finish comes off super easily, so it should just take me a few minutes to do that, and then we'll go over everything with a 220 grit and remove any excess filling that there is, and it's also gonna smooth the drawers over for when we oil them. So I'm getting really excited now. It's time to wipe everything down. We're gonna get an idea of what it's gonna look like when it's oiled. And then once it's completely dry, we are ready to oil these pieces, and can't wait. So I've got 2 just damp cloths. I wet them with water, wring all the water out so I'm not getting like drips of water. We're just using this to wipe the surface, collect any dust that is still there, and that way we won't get any dust or little particles stuck underneath that finish. So let's get to wiping. Oh, so here's my thing. Do I keep it this color, or do I stain it actually? All right, I know I've been talking about oiling this piece this entire time, and I will still oil it to finish it off, but I'm gonna stain it before that because I'm just not loving the way it looks once the oil would be there. So that's another reason why it's so great to wipe everything down, because it gives you a good look at what the wood is going to look like once it's sealed. And I just wasn't liking it. It was too like orange, yellow. It was kind of just dating the piece a little bit, so I want to make it a little bit darker. I'm going to be using Early American stain, always a good go-to. I think it's going to darken it up a little bit, bring out the wood grain really well, and then we'll go over it with a tung oil to finish everything off and seal it in, and I think it will look really good. So let's get this stained, then oiled. All right, so before I go in and top coat it with a coat of tung oil, I want to touch up any of those little areas that I filled earlier. So I'm going to try and go in only with my Varthane pens, and if these work, great. If not, I can go in with my paint touch-up kit, but I think these will do the job, and it's going to be way less mess and way quicker. So I'm going to go around to each little tiny area there is. There's quite a few, so this might take me a minute, but then we'll get this top coated.
These Varathane markers are very beginner friendly. They're very easy to use and they're mess free, which is my favorite. So I grab these first before my paint touch-up kit. If I can make these work, I do. And I will say this, they are very buildable and they may look like it's not quite a perfect match, but I find once you get that top coat on, it really blends well together.
All right, I've let this sit for a little bit. Everything's pretty dry now. I'm gonna go in with some tung oil. I'm gonna apply this out of the sun in the shade, and we're gonna apply thin layers. I think I'm just gonna do 2, which is the minimum. I don't think I want this super shiny. I think 2 is gonna be durable enough and give me the finish that I want. So, thin layers.
I am making sure to emphasize applying this in the shade and out of the heat because I messed up big time on a furniture flip. So I will link that video up here if you haven't seen it. Go check it out. But essentially, I applied a polyurethane in the sun, it dried and turned into a crumbly mess, and I had to start all over basically, and it was a nightmare. But I make sure to not make that mistake again. So here we are in the shade, out of the heat, and I'm applying a very thin layer, and I'm gonna do 2 coats of this. I'm showing you 1 coat here, but I do go in later with a second coat on top of this, so I make sure it has a nice durable top coat.
All right, so while that first coat of tung oil dries, I'm gonna work on the hardware for a little bit. So I soaked this in some boiling water, baking soda, and then I scrubbed it with a little bit of Barkeeper's Friend. Now they're nice and clean, but they are silver, and it looks like they had a gold finish on them before, and I kind of want to make them gold again. So I'm gonna go in with some Rub and Buff. I've got a little paintbrush, and I'm just going to spend a few minutes painting the Rub and Buff on here, and it should give us a nice gold finish. This one is in antique gold. So you really don't need much of this stuff. A little bit will go a long way. And then as like when I put that one down, it was already dry. So you want to work pretty quickly with this to get a nice, smooth, even finish. Sometimes I'll even go in and not use a paintbrush, and I'll just put 2 gloves on and kind of rub it around with my fingers. I want to make sure that this finish is really smooth though, and a paintbrush does a better job at that. I'm also going to do the little cups that go on the feet. That way this gold matches the gold of the hardware and everything goes well together.
Then I put the foot caps back on and I slid those on, and you can't see here, but I put that little nail in and I'm hammering that in to secure it, and I did that on both of the dressers.
I've got both of these dressers inside now. All the drawers are put back in, but I want to finish off the drawers by oiling the inside. It's gonna rejuvenate this wood, bring it back to life, give it some moisture. I also want to do the same thing on the drawer glides. It's a little bit sticky when you pull them in and out, and oiling the drawer glide on the drawer as well as the one inside the drawer is going to make it glide super smooth, and you won't have any stickiness when you go to pull that in or out. So I've got my big bristle brush here, and this is just an all-natural furniture care wood oil. I like to use beeswax oil too. This one is just something I have on hand. There's so many different kinds out there. You can get it for super cheap on Amazon. But a little bit goes a long way, but it makes such a big difference. Making sure you get that drawer glide really well. It's just gonna make them glide so much easier. And then once we get all these oiled, we'll get the hardware on and it'll be finished. So much better than it was before. Okay, now it is time for hardware. I'm so excited. Our hardware is looking amazing. It is nice antique gold. I think it's really gonna accent this wood color and grain and just make everything pop. I'm excited to get this hardware on, so let's start. I've got all of my hardware laid out here and all of the hardware laid out for the top ones, so let's get everything on. I always love putting knobs on because usually you don't need a screwdriver or anything for the back. You can hold the screw and then twist the knob on. And it's so easy. And it's so good. Oh my gosh. I'm obsessed.
Now it's time for a quick staging before the final reveal. I started off with a large piece of art, which honestly I need to get some new art to add to my staging collection. I added a cute little lamp and then some greenery to bring this set alive. And now let's go back to the beginning to see what we started off with, so that we can really appreciate what we're ending with.
Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you really enjoyed this flip. This was a fun one for me, bringing these pieces back to life. I don't know how I've been flipping furniture for this long without a carbide scraper, but it is my new favorite tool. As always, I will leave a profit breakdown in the description below, so go check it out if you're interested, as well as a list of my most used tools. But for now, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!